Good morning and good evening, everybody. We're happy to see you here. Uh, this is a continuation of a three-part series of the Anurag Saga, the book written by Sant Kabir. Cesariji had asked me to speak about three satsangs um, from the book. So last monthly meeting, we glanced through the contents of the Anurag Saga. We went through the 12 parts of Kal and all the four messengers of Kal Niranjan, Kal being time and space. We also briefly spoke about the story of the future as to what happens when a PLM or a perfect living master leaves the body. Here, the PLM or the successor, Kabir, Satguru Kabir, mentions is the word incarnate or the spiritual successor. So after the meeting last month, we had a question by one of our friends, which we couldn't address at that point in time. He asked about the 12 parts of Kal. What are the representations of these parts in today's scenario? If you will be able to share some light on it. So the question pertains to last week's discussion on the topic of the 12 parts. And if we go by a particular sentence used by Kabir, he mentions, in your mind, you should be ready to discriminate. Or we can also say that we must at all times use our critical faculty. Masters, I don't remember Ishwarji mentioning this person. I mean, of course, he did mention Fakir Chand as a PLM. His master, great master Huzur Maharaj, as a PLM, and several others, but he did not particularly take side or mention uh, to give scope of doubt in that aspect. So to come to current scenario, even if you look at, if you dissect the book, there are several parts where they speak about family members. Let's be known that any family member is not the word incarnate. That's what Kabir says. And time and again, we see that even Kirpal Singh, if I'm not wrong, mentions about this. And we do see a large following of the Sangha that proceeds with the passing of the master. Even Ishwarji, in several of his talks, if we do remember, I mean, time and again, he mentions, rest assured that if anyone were to say that I am a PLM or the successor, you can strike him off right there. But we have seen, I mean, Ishwarji as is my master, and we've seen a few days after he passed he left the body. We've seen several of them come forward publicly on social media, mentioning that they're the successors, or Ishwarji told them that he's going to be, or he's going to be the master. He or she uh, will be the master, and they've come on record and said it a couple of times. So, end of the day, we have to use our critical faculty. The that is in public. So if I were to go to my master and ask him when he's alive, it's a different matter altogether. And in private, he can choose to, or he could, or rather say, now you know. I mean, in that sense. So to give you a critical, or to give you a final hint. So this is how at all times we should be aware. Even last week, I think a month ago, I'd met a friend in Bangalore who's an initiate of Ishwarji, and he happened to ask me about the same person which I was just mentioning to you about, who came forward and to say that he is the successor. Ishwarji said he will be the successor on social media. I mean, he said this on social media, and during our pleasantries and conversation, he did say that he felt a particular pull for this particular person after listening to several talks of his online, because everything right now is mostly online. To which I had to, I mean, as a friend or someone we we're in close touch with, I just had to share that each one has to make their own choice. We when we met our master, no, at least no one told me what to do in the sense to seek initiation. It came from within, and at some point we have to make choices, and we have to be mindful of it. So this is pertaining to what was discussed last month in our monthly meeting. Now, today, what I would possibly like to talk about is a particular chapter right at the beginning. I think it goes by prologue. Kabir Das, the Satguru, speaks about the signs of a lover and what does the Satguru do. Just these two aspects, more or less these two aspects. Here, Dharam Das, the disciple of Sadguru Kabir, asks a particular question about the lover. And the question goes, I mean, he asks how I could recognize the one with whom love manifests. Because without love, the jiva cannot be liberated. So this was the question asked by Dharam Das to Sadguru Kabir, to which Kabir gives three parables or three examples in terms of what exactly or who exactly a lover is. I mean, one is the very straightforward moth to the flame. We have heard this time and again. Be like the moth, the lover who sacrifices itself to the flame. The second example Kabir goes about is the deer, which I particularly like. I mean, he says, intoxicated by the music from the hunter, the deer runs to the hunter head on, without any fear, not even no fear, not even when he sacrifices its own head. So this is a kind of an example that Kabir speaks about. He also speaks about sati. It's a ritual in ancient India, not very ancient in princely states of India. Now, though it's banned, it's a practice where women, especially married women, used to sacrifice themselves in the funeral pyre of the husbands. Time and again, we have seen all mystic books speak about the lover and the beloved as the husband and the wife. So in this case, sati as an example of the ritual of sati, where the wife sacrifices herself due to the unconditional love for her husband, is drastic in today's times, but that's what Kabir says it takes to become a perfect lover, and it's not easy, he says. So now coming to the aspect of what does the Sat Guru do. Here we have to make a distinction between Sat, S-A-T-H or S-A-T versus Sad. Sad, so a sadhu in a sense. So the Sad, I mean, Kabir goes about a description of what exactly a Sad is. A Sad is someone who, with the love and devotion to the Sat Guru of his time, were able to reach a place of Sad. And he uses very different words in his book. One of it is mritak, which would mean mritya or dead while alive. Or in some books, there is a term used as jivan mukti, like someone who's liberated while alive. Kabir uses the word mritak. The second word he uses is the motionless plane, where he describes motionless plane as a region of Satlok and above and upwards. And he also uses an example of the Anal bird or Anul bird, which is a mythological bird, which you can come to a bit later in terms of description. So, what exactly is a perfect sad, a perfect sadhu? He says a perfect sadhu is the one who lives like a mritak, dead while alive, is a perfect sadhu. And Kabir also goes on to explain that to develop the qualities of a person who's dead while alive or a mritak is very hard, and only a brave soul can uh, undergo it or do it. Um, we have heard Ishwarji mentioning about this is a path of the warrior, and here we see Kabir speak about just the stage of Sad, the perfect Sad, as uh, the stage of a warrior, and in order to reach that stage. What I particularly found interesting in this particular part of the book of a perfect Sad, a perfect person who's dead while alive. Sad is a is in the inner plane in Sanskrit is someone who is uh, crossed just above the mind or just after the so-called Manasarovar lake, where it's just a metaphor where he dips himself and he's rid of all the five children of the mind. Um, what I find Kabir mentioning about the state of the perfect sad, he says, rare are those who deserve it. And this particularly caught my eye because, we talk about Satlok or Anamid, regions beyond what we're discussing right now. We're just talking about perfect sad. We're talking about the region of this just above the causal plane, Sun, Asun, and we have seen many sad gurus today, and either they have the honorifics or it's a state, it's a stage within. No degrees of such have been given out in public, but we have noticed people with exceptional amount of power. They have very good knowledge of the language, uh, in a particular sense. Now, I began to think as to why this stage is very rare and why Kabir mentions rare are those who deserve it. One of the satsangs I think Cesariji mentioned was Ishwarji or Ishwapuriji telling him that very few people or very few satsangis will reach even the causal plane, the top of the causal plane. And very few, is a handful is the right word if I'm not wrong with it. But this is a very serious statement because who's deserving of it? Um, who's the perfect lover? Is it a two-way street? Uh, Ishwar Puriji at one point explained what Swamiji mentions about the lives it takes to reach even the region of the Sad or Sadhu. Ishwarji quoted Swamiji saying, "Ek janam gur bhakti, dusra janam naam, तीसरा जन्म तुर्यापद, चौथा है निजधाम." So ek janam gur bhakti, which basically, he Ishwarji mentions what Swamiji explains in his writings about the different lives. It's not a one life um, discovery of the self or the highest. It goes on very for various lifetimes. And the first life is basically um, bhakti or love and devotion to the Guru. Dusra Janam Naam is in this parable initiation by a perfect living master. So the second life, only the second life after Guru Bhakti and the Darshan and the Drishti, and making some progress within is the disciple or the initiate, the soul or the jiva, receives Nandan, initiation, to comprehend what that is. Tisra Janam Turyapad. Turyapad in Indian literature would generally mean causal plane or top of the causal plane. Uh, some Vedic books mention Turyavastha, or the state of being in Turya, or the state of no thought or no, I mean, Shunya, there's no absolutely zero, Shunya or zero. In Sanskrit, it's also known as Sun or Mahasun. And they break down Shunya by two. I mean, these are again interpretations of the mind, and these are very high stages. So the third life, one is accorded, if one is lucky and by the grace of the master, one is accorded the Turiya Pad. Chautha is the fourth life, is when you actually reach your Nijdam, or the true home, the final resting place. So it's very interesting that this goes by stages, and this is not a one life thing. We are all in a hurry. We want the true right now. We want it today. We want it now. Um, I remember reading about Fakir Chand. Uh, he mentions that he spent 17 physical years in the state of Sun, or just in the causal plane, just around there. And I can only comprehend how painful and difficult that the period could have been, because he goes on to say that it is so tricky. Even the sad, the stage of the sadhu, or the turyapad, or the causal plane, just above the causal plane, shunya, is so tricky that even the slightest thought within the thought manifests itself on the outside. And I mean, at some point, uh, he says that I went to my guru, or my Satguru, and explained the condition, and that's when Sadguru called him beside, and I mean, there's a separate discussion about that. So this particular stage by itself is a um, very high stage, only the second stage in Sant. Very few deserve it. That's what the literature also says, and it's also very rare. The stages of within the mind are attained by the grace of the master, and nothing else, and love and devotion, and nothing else. Because Fakir Chand also mentions that he needed a PLM, a perfect living master, to even understand or go and uh, explain in private about the earnings, not in general satsang. Because at some point, the bell sound, or it doesn't work. Even the radiant form of the master is in the astral form of the master. It's still within the region of the mind, and the path emphasizes a living master, and a living master whom we can go face to face, look eye to eye, and say, "This is what I'm going through, and this is what I feel, and please show me the way." I mean, basically, say nothing if you must, but he would know, he or she would know. But the path requires a perfect living master in this particular sense. Now, Kabir, uh, after speaking briefly about the perfect sad, he also asks, in the sense, how does the sad become the anul bird, or the anul bird? So I'll have to read what the anul bird is in the literature. It says, example of the anul bird: with the grace of the master, the jiva is called sadhu, and becoming the anul bird goes back to his eternal home. Dharamdas, understand these words. I am telling you about the anul bird, who lives in the sky and is supported by the air day and night. She performs the sexual act through the eyes, and in that way becomes pregnant. She lays her eggs in the sky where there is no support. The egg is nourished while falling in the sky and is hatched, and the young bird takes birth. It is on the way that it opens its eye, and on the way that it gets its wings. When it finally reaches the earth, it realizes that this is not its home. Realizing that, it flies back to where its parents live. This is an interesting sentence. The annual bird doesn't come down to bring the baby back. It itself goes home, treading the path. Many birds live in this world, but very few of them are annual birds. Birds like that are rare, and rare are the jivas who merge themselves in Nam. So he goes on to even explain about the service of the Sadguru day and night, or seeks refuge with the Sadguru and one keen desire of Nam, uh, and not having attachment to wealth and property. These are easy things to say, but very without the grace of the master, it's very difficult to inculcate. The the very interesting line here, which he mentions, is the parent does not come down. The bird, the adult bird doesn't come down to bring the baby back. It itself goes home treading the path. So at this stage, sometimes we can also, because beyond the mind, there are times where we can say that we can become so full of ourselves and say, hey, I mean, this is it. Um, I am I am, or and this I'm the master. I mean, there's so many things. The regions within the mind. Kabir Das in another Shabad Wali, trying to get the name. Uh, it goes by the name. Kabir had written several poetry, and one of the poetry is Kar Naino Didar Mahal Mein Pyar Hai. So in this particular poetry, Shabad Wali, uh, Kabir mentions that Kal Niranjan has created replicas of Satlok in region, each region of the astral, each region of the causal, Mahasun and Sun, and in a sense. So the deceptions of Kal is so huge that without a PLM or a perfect living master or a Param Sansat Guru, we may look at the replicas as the real deal. And this is something that only a PLM can give more light on in a sense. But at the same time, these are regions, we're talking about regions beyond the mind using words that are coming out from the mind. So, I mean, these are experiential um, states of being in the sense, and anything beyond uh, name and form, or light and sound, duality, uh, master, in the sense of the physical master, because master keeps saying, all perfect living masters have said, the truth is within, go inside, you see my real form. He never says that I am outside the real form. Go within. And there's a very interesting Taoist, I think Lao Tzu had said this, when the chela, I mean, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and when the student is really ready, the teacher disappears. So at that state, uh, due to the grace of the self, our own self, uh, and the grace of the being within, we are the veil comes off in a metaphorical sense. So this is what Kabir mentions about the prologue in terms of the signs of a lover and what does the Sat Guru do. Uh, from my understanding, we also know that the Kabir is also limited in his as in a sense of what he can explain in a book. Of course, Swamiji mentions about reasons within Satlok as reserved only for Satpurush as Alaka Manami. I mean, a few others have gone beyond that, regions within the mind and regions within the mind. Uh, it is so this is what we have to say about prologue. Uh, there was one question, if I may read it out, which is Helji wanted me to answer in a sense. He said the question goes like this: can a person who has received initiation of a perfect living master be deceived by Kal Niranjan? This is a very interesting question. Uh, at the at the particular onset, the short answer should have been yes, right? I mean, but if you understand what was spoken last time in the last meeting, Kal Niranjan, as Kal being time, he says, I will deceive, he tells Kabir, the Satguru, I will deceive everyone you initiate. And in the same book, I mean, if you look at one stage one of the explanation of this particular question, and in the same book, there is a question which goes, who can get released from Kal? And there's a quote by saying, brother, I don't see anyone who can release us at the end of time except one whom I will describe. The Sadguru is the only one who can get us released, believe this as true. Uh, this is contradictory or self-contradictory in a sense, but coming to understand that the paths of Kal were sanctioned by Satpurush or Kabir himself, in a sense, we have to, I mean, at least from my understanding, we have to look at it as Kal and Akal, parts of the same coin. The totality of consciousness, as Ishwapuri ji has mentioned in his book as a term which he'd love to use, in a sense where he speaks about total consisting of everything without any exception of it. So, does a master test a disciple? Yes. Uh, the tests are real today. I mean, the test does not end until we ourselves are convinced within our own selves that we have reached the goal of Sammat, our goal of being. I mean, if you look at what the test of a master, a particular example, if I may share, I was with Cesare ji at a particular time, several years ago, and we were sitting beside each other, where it was just a general conversation, a casual conversation, and he was telling us that there was a time where Master Ishwapuri ji, our master, was at a particular table, and he was seated beside Ishwa ji. And as we all know, as few of us who have met and been with the master several times, that during satsangs, he always has people coming to him for a couple of minutes and sharing a few things, and sharing whatever it is, spiritual, non-spiritual, and going about their work. So one instance where Ishwarji and Pujaji was seated at a table, he mentions, was a wealthy gentleman who had come and made his presence felt in front of Ishwar Puriji, and with folded hands he says, I, everything of mine or all my wealth is yours. I'm paraphrasing here, these may not be the exact words, but this is what I understood as. And this gentleman leaves. And Cesariji was still there at the table, and after the gentleman leaves, Master Ishwarji says, we shall now put him to the test. And this actually struck me, and I mean, it struck me hard. It struck me so hard that my head went back a bit. Like, what did I just hear? Uh, who tests the jiva? This could be one of the questions. I mean, is it Akal or is it Kal? Who are we dealing with? Do we really know who is in front of us as a PLM? Are we even conscious of what I mean, what words are uttered in front of in front of a perfect living master who's got all the power in his palm of his hand? And we have seen this time and again, even in the Sikh literatures, where Bhai Manj, I think Sikh Guru of Guru Arjan, where he was also tested. Of he was he had, he had to lose all his wealth, family, children, just for the sake of initiation. It's a very famous story, and you can get it online about Bhai Manj, Bhai or brother Manj, Manjh. And the other example that I remember reading the Bible at one point, and there's this book of Job, I think it's in the Old Testament, where uh, God tests Job by he loses his family, he loses his livestock, he loses everything, and just to see whether you love God or love the Master for just for himself or what he provides or doesn't provide. So this is in fact a very different path to understand. Um, at some point, some of us will argue that Sadhguru should provide us everything. I mean, worldly and otherwise. I mean, yeah. I mean, depends on what kind of a deal you have with the master and what package you all carry in a sense. But who tests whom in a sense? So Kal and Akal, Kal and Dayal, parts of the same coin. Now, this is one stage of the answer, but at the end, uh, what I personally believe it's where our seeking lies. If our seeking lies in the highest, the PLM will not let us deceive by Karl Niranjan, but which is part of himself in a sense. It depends. The key is the seeking, is what I firmly believe, and I give my. I, so in order for me to give this particular exercise, or we've been giving this talk for a few minutes, has been exceptionally challenging, particularly because we were recorded a couple of times, and I couldn't first possibly look at myself on camera. I find this gentleman speaking a little nervous. He takes probably he's looking down at a sheet placed in front of him, and and in order to give this particular talk today, I thought I'd look at the video which was uploaded by Nick, and I couldn't in a sense. And uh, at some point, it just dawned on me in a particular sense that I can't even look at myself in a mirror. And how are we, even for a few seconds? So uh, even if the attempt of looking at myself, I mean, as a metaphor, my mind always goes to something else. Oh, why don't you look at this? Why don't you look at that? And it uh, at some point, uh, it it I question whether we ourselves are impediments, the self, we ourselves uh, are impediments to knowing the truth. The uh, ability to know or not know lies with our own true self, the higher self within ourselves. And um, by the grace of the master, going by the state, what Lao Tzu had mentioned, um, towards the end, when the seeker is truly ready, the master disappears, being one with the Sadguru, Param Sat Sadguru, is truly a gift. And even though it's the rarest of the rare, uh, I personally think it's worthwhile. So thank you, and I'd like to give. I think we can take a short break now. Nick?
Yeah, do you want to take a break?
Yeah, we can take a 5 minute break. Meanwhile, if anyone would have, has any questions for Suzari ji, the satsang will start right now. Yeah, after the short break. Thank you, and rather sorry.